around our membership. So we have had a couple of vacancies that have opened up recently. One was longstanding for sort of a representative from small business. We have, I believe she is online, but Ayana Khan with the Delaware Black Chamber of Commerce has agreed to serve the consortium. So she will be a new member moving forward. Ayana, thank you for agreeing. We're very happy to have you and look forward to seeing you in person. And then we had a spot for a community member, which was made vacant, unfortunately, by the passing of the very honorable Ted Blunt. And Councilwoman Maria Cabrera has agreed to serve in that role for us. So she's at a conference right now. She may chime in online, but we are also very happy to have her and to have a full body. Welcome, Mr. Mayor. And I'm very excited just to be here with you all night and to hand things over, unless Matt has anything to add, to Representative Chicocha to lead us through tonight's proceedings.
Good evening, everyone. Thank everyone for being here. And on behalf of the governance group with myself and Councilman Street, who unfortunately is sick this evening and unable to be with us, and he was supposed to kick us off and walk us through the history of this governance and the challenge that we've had for so long in the city of Wilmington. So I know I could never replicate my dear uncle's passion and thunder and just the reality that he's lived walking through this struggle. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about just some of the reform efforts that inside of our packet, that the reform efforts that we've been through. So we've started, if you want to start with the Neighborhood Schools Act of 2000 and 2001 with the Neighborhood Schools Act in that committee and the plan that came from it, which was sent to the General Assembly, and there was no action taken. In 2008, Senator Margaret Rose with her group decided to address the Wilmington Education Task Force. And there was a recommendation that was presented, and she mainly among them with the plan for the river plan, and it was sent to the General Assembly. And again, there was no action taken. In 2015, with WEAC was created, they created a plan and they worked thoroughly through it. And then in 2016, converted that plan to WEAC and was presented to the General Assembly. Thankfully, it did make it to the state board and made it to the state house, into the House and Senate, where it fell a little short. And I guess that's where we'll pick up this conversation this evening. My senator to my left, she and I became members of the General Assembly after being members of WEAC. We became members of the General Assembly, and we felt very obligated, and we felt very charged and very motivated to do what we could initially to ensure that WEAC didn't die and that we were able to do what we can to resurface WEAC and to ensure that that plan had the opportunity to be heard and to be implemented. So shortly thereafter, after our freshman year of learning our way around the General Assembly, Senator Lockman and I created the Reading, and we created Reading with a very aggressive timeline, one in which we smile and chuckle at now, but one in which we were very hamstrung in believing that it was the right thing to do to go forward, because we felt, again, just coming off the heels of WEAC, we felt that it was still very close in our rearview mirrors, and we didn't think that there was a need to let that momentum pass us. So we felt that we should be able to pick it up very aggressively and move forward, and that we could have the opportunity to present a plan through Reading that will allow us again to pick up where we left off and to get a plan through the state board and through the House and the Senate. And we felt in a very quick manner. And we didn't think it was naive. We really thought that, especially since a lot of the work had just been completed with WEAC and WEAC, that we were in a good place to truly get this done. And then we worked and we set up our various committees, and myself and Eugene Young, we were leading the governance work And we worked very diligently. I'll say for that 9 months to a year, working, vetting different proposals, county district, city district, and neighborhood district, and the Rivers Plan, and Dean Henry with the Wilmington Improvement Network. When we felt that we did a good job of vetting all of the plans, and then unfortunately we were hit with COVID. And right when we felt we were moving forward with some momentum, a lot of that momentum was just sidetracked, with a worldwide pandemic that really took a lot of focus away from the effort that we were trying to lead. Thankfully, we tried to stay committed during COVID. Eugene Young and I, we were still meeting with stakeholders, still meeting monthly with the superintendents. And then Eugene Young, when he moved on, I asked Councilman Street to be my co-lead, and he agreed. And the first thing that his first initial comments was he believed that this probably would be his last bite at the apple. And he said that he didn't feel any differently than Senator Lockman and I felt initially, that there was no need for us to go back and rehash and to start all the way over and to vet so many plans that had already been vetted before. So we started there. We started our conversations there, Councilman Street and I meeting with stakeholders and just truly looking at the WEAC plan, looking at the Rivers Plan, trying to see ways in which it could be adapted to a model that can truly be implemented, one that we felt would have a chance to make it through the state board, to the House and to the Senate, and truly have an opportunity to have the voice of our city be heard. And after repeated plans of having just again and again, there being the recommendations of reducing the number of school districts in the city of Wilmington, we felt that we would start there. We would start with where we had left off, and we would use that as our base. So we started there, and that's how we ended up with the proposal that we have before us this evening. It's a proposal in which is very similar to WEAC, and with a few slight changes. One in which the first being that both Colonial and Christina would no longer serve the city of Wilmington. Both of those districts would leave the city, and parts of them would be picked up by Red Clay and Brandywine School District. The main difference that then the Rivers Plan is that Red Clay would keep Shortledge and Warner School. That was some of the feedback that we did receive. So although they're on the northern side of the Brandywine, Red Clay would keep those schools, and we felt that was in some of the stability and with that district that we would keep those two schools in that district. So we've been going around with Councilman Street and myself, meeting with the school districts. We met with all 4 of our school districts. We're in the process of getting feedback from them on our proposal. Our intention is to meet with this body this evening to go through an array of workshops and exercises to garner feedback from you on the proposal. Our stage where we are currently is we're gathering feedback on the proposal, and our intent and the good thing of our legislation, the way it was written, we have the opportunity to present multiple plans. So it's not just one plan. We plan to present this as our first plan with feedback from our districts, from our stakeholders, in order to have what we believe will be a plan that can truly make it through the House and Senate and State Board, to one that can truly be implemented. I mean, finally, to where we have the opportunity to do and to cross that finish line where so many of the other plans and other groups didn't. So that's where we are this evening. We welcome your questions, your feedback, your comments as we go through the workshops. We need your feedback because this is a huge undertaking. So it is, again, we say to everyone, it's not just about changing district lines and moving students from one district to another. We believe that is the very needed and essential first step, but it's only the first step, and many other steps that need to come along with it. Changes to the Newcastle County tax pool, changes to our city's involvement in the educational destiny of our children, changes to the overall all governance and working with the WLC and that group in terms of the coordination between our districts. So again, it's a very, what we think is a very needed first step, but one in which we believe that now is a very perfect timing. Some say why now, and my heart screams, why not 20 years ago? And some of the things that encourage me about the moment and that we're in now, and if you think about property reassessment going on, you're thinking about the need for referendum reform and so many other things that impact our student body throughout the state, but particularly in Newcastle County, ways in which that support us, the funding report that screams need in our changes for our funding system. All of these things really beckon the need that why we can do this now, why this is the perfect opportunity for us to come together and galvanize a plan that can truly make it through the House and the Senate and the State Board, and truly allow our city to have a voice in the direction of its future for its children. We again look at this body as being the springboard of those who can support us in developing a plan that can support us with being successful. So again, thank everyone for being here, and we look forward to going through the exercises with you this evening, and again, answering your questions as they are presented.
We just have, maybe we can just circle through some of the
Yes.
timeline slides. Kevin, say you have a comment.
Yes.
Since Mr. Street isn't here to talk about historical context, I'll give a little bit from my firsthand knowledge and my good friend Ray here next to me. When I was a senior in high school, Wilmington High in 1974, the busing was first enacted. It was a challenge for many of us because we got along pretty well ourselves, at that time. But the busing came in, and that's the single most important impact to the city of Wilmington was busing. And we're here 50 years later, and we're still talking about it. The difference when Ray and I and Jay were on the Neighborhood Schools Acts and all the different things we did back then is that we had a legislature that was controlled by some individuals that didn't care about city of Wilmington. When the Neighborhood Schools Act was passed, my opinion of it was that was meant to keep everybody in the city on the island because nobody wanted our children to be around their children. Y'all can stay right where you're at. We're good with that. You go to school where you're at, but we never got the resources we needed to be able to make that happen. So I think that's the biggest difference. Now we have yourselves and a lot, Brzezicki, we have a lot of people around the table who are trying to look at this a little bit differently. And we're hopeful this time it can go, but it was not through effort, not part of the effort to try and make changes about the river to river plan and everything else to see what goes on. Because we definitely need to look differently about how kids are going. But I will say this too, we have to keep in mind that we're not just going to move the individual to a school district. We have to make sure the individual has the resources necessary to be able to make them move forward in life. Because just allowing me in Browntown now to be able to go to Richardson Park isn't changing me. I'm still struggling to learn and get ahead in life. So I think everybody in this room understands that as well. That's the biggest one. And my final, get off the soapbox. If we spend as much time on education in this city as we do crime, we would be better off. It is the number one issue that we have to face in the city. I think the mayor's efforts and a few other things that's getting behind us, but this is the most important issue we have to address. So with that, I look forward to trying to see what we can do to make this happen.
Thank you, Kevin. And I was reminded of some comments and geared toward that point. As a young man in that 9-3 system, where we had 9 years here, 9 years out, 3 years here. My 3 years were at Warner Elementary School, and I will always believe in my heart that was the most equitable learning environment ever, because the students who came here, they were treated the same way we were treated. But those 9 years when we were out, we were never treated the same, with that same value and care. And then at the Neighborhood Schools Act, I'm not sure what our proficiency rates were in the early 20s. Maybe someone around the table may know, but I don't think that anyone, probably maybe in the 20-25% maybe, but no one would think that 20 years later, 25 years later, that we'll be in single digit proficiency rates and still having this same conversation. So it screams for there being a need for us to do things differently. And they say if not now, when? Because we kicked this can down the road for so long. It's a decision that we have to make, that we have to make. I was telling my dear senator on the way in the door, I said, it's March Madness. I'm not rethinking this shot. We're shooting it, and we're just going to shoot it because we're at the point where our city's destiny, we're deteriorating without an education system that is truly benefiting our city, benefiting our children, where they can grow, where there's equity, where there's equality, where there is a balance between what happens in the city and what happens outside of the city. And that's all our city needs is a chance. That's all our city needs is a chance. And it's about an investment in doing things the right way. And so often we are reminded about how we got here. And it was due to no fault of the city itself, but we're the ones suffering. And so it's time for us to make this decision on every level. It involves our district partners, it involves the state board, it involves the General Assembly. And we just have to begin to do what's right, to make our city whole. And again, this is the first step of a very long process, but it's a long overdue step. Yes. And our timeline for our proposal, so currently, Councilman Street and I, as noted, we've been going around meeting with our district partners, getting feedback from other stakeholders. We have some meetings planned with some other elected bodies in the city, and we're getting feedback. We plan to have meetings to official feedback from each of our districts, as well as having feedback from their boards, meeting with their boards. It is our intention to try to wrap up these meetings by the end of the month so that we can include their comments and their suggestions for potential changes to our proposal, into our final proposal that will be submitted to the state board, and that is in early April. Early mid-April.
There we go.
In April. So that's what we're headed for. So we basically have a little over a month to work with our stakeholders to get that feedback so that we can have it to present to the state board.
So now we're gonna move to the feedback activity. So like as now being stated, we want to get your feedback mostly on the 13 stipulations of the proposal. We tried to group these stipulations into like categories so we could streamline the process in our meeting timeframe. So we'll start with stipulations 1 through 3, then we'll move to 4 to 6, 7 to 8, and so on. I will note stipulations 4 and 6 are the only ones that don't fit the most neatly together. So for each grouping of stipulations, Kelly and I will give a quick review of the stipulations. Then we will turn it over to you all for the activity, where consortium members will work with a partner or a group of 3 to think about the stipulations individually, share your thoughts with your partner or your group, and record them on your worksheet as you go. So we'll repeat this process for each grouping of stipulations, and then we'll give you ample time to share out on each of the stipulations. So we're making sure we're getting your written feedback, but we're also allowing time for discussion and deliberation. For consortium members online, we'll put you in a breakout group that will be monitored, and you'll have a Google Doc version of these questions, and you'll be able to participate that way. For members of the public who are present at the meeting, you're also able to work in groups and fill out the worksheets. We will collect those at the end. We have copies of the worksheets and the proposal for you that Ashley will hand out. For members of the public online, we have a Google form for you to be able to fill out to give feedback on the proposal. And that is just as robust as the feedback activity. And we also have an email address where you can email us your thoughts, as well as put things in the chat. Does that make sense? Anyone have questions? Elaine, you can go to the next slide.
Yeah. So stipulations 1 through 3 are grouped together because they all relate to shifts in the district boundaries. Stipulation 1 relates to the orderly and minimally disruptive student assignments and changes to sort of the governance responsibilities. The proposal recommends that we shift from 4 districts to 2 districts serving Wilmington students. This would mean Red Clay and Brandywine continue to serve Wilmington students, and Christina and Colonial no longer serve Wilmington students, and Christina's footprint is no longer in the city. You can go to the second one. Stipulation 2 relates directly to redrawing the boundaries and improving educational services for students. I won't read all of these bullet points to you, but you can review them all in details on pages 18 to 20 of the proposal. If you go to the next slide, Elena. I think the maps are more helpful. So the slide shows the current boundaries of City of Wilmington, and zoomed out, you can see that the Christina School District is non-contiguous. And with the zoomed in version, you can see the 4 traditional school districts sort of served within city limits. So in this slide, this is the proposed boundaries for the City of Wilmington now being served by 2 districts instead of 4. With the right in green being the Brandywine district and the left in pink being the Red Clay district. This proposal is called the Modified River Plan, as Namdi said, because the traditional river plan had Warner Elementary and Shortridge Academy transferring to Brandywine. However, in this proposal, the Modified River Plan the Modified River Plan keeps these 2 schools for Red Clay to be, minimally disruptive to students per sort of that stipulation. Stipulation 3 is pretty straightforward in that the proposal recommends that students must be able to continue at their school. So I won't read all the text that's on there. Now, if there's no questions, we're going to transition to the activity. So work with your partner or your group of 3 to discuss stipulations 1 through 3 and record your feedback on the worksheet. We'll also get the online members into their breakout groups to do the same, and members of public are encouraged to work in their small groups. How do you decide? I guess we can post it at this time. I was thinking people who are sitting next to each other, but people can stick around or move out to different rooms if they want. If you're uncomfortable with them, you're gonna sit next to you. Can you send a form link that we would regular review?
Yeah.
And then you can report out in the whatever time you buy. You love small groups. You do. I mean, I just want to on that. I'm gonna go down and hang out with Emily and Tika. That makes sense. Yeah, that's. All right. Thank you.
That was a speech to text. Like. All right, get my phone out.
How are you? How are you?
I've noticed that.
I think it's what I'm gonna watch and you're going to.
All right. Oh, sorry, Kelly. you said it's forming with her.
So, sorry, my bad.
I think Kelly's in the middle. Yeah. No. Can't do that on this.
It's another, it's wrong.
So I guess my bias. The better.
Planning directors, right?
So just on one, so like I said,
No, no, no.
Okay. Yeah.
so the way I read that. I love that.
It's not like
That's why I was asking.
you know, is it not supposed to be like?
I don't see this.
Like the,
I think the problem.
Mayor might have like, like it's just what it is, but it is, you know, it also. Years, that's, it's like, it's like a consensus track. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Sorry.
That was last year. This year, folks. So.
We have a big amount of things.
It's like probably 4 or 5 things. One of the things is 2 years.
Yeah, and it can make it, although they're getting the top of it, but
I think. I think one of the things is what you said. So this I think the quality time was so I just don't know that because I just don't think that you should. Well, on your side. I got market station. The side of market twenty, the side of market 24. And so it's all, it's like Lancaster. We'll get some new word numbers. It's like, this is the. Here's a great one. For whether, but I don't know how you want to shoot. Yeah. So we just need to see kids.
You have to understand your activities.
So everybody. This guy is not until the only one which is already guys. Why did I feel that you want to? You better. In red cloud, people that very much. Here you are. This is like us, we grab it and we're out there with a lot of other. Little. Seeing the sound. It sounds. But sure. Yeah. That's what it is.
That's happening a lot.
Well, I just think the idea that, yeah, I mean, well, by the way, the new building. The worst thing in the world, see, here we are, up in slides back to. That's a number. Well, up and on.
And now that's not. Because it's.
Whatever. It's 2000. Well, yeah, okay, but I mean, I still think that what happened.
No, I'm just.
Whatever it is. So it's like.
Yeah, they're
I think I hope. And by the way, you don't. Federal requirements, we would have to meet It's right back. Basically, we look at, percentage and we look at growth. And we only release the percentage. We never release the growth. And what we've seen is that our students, although we evaluate teachers based on their looking, the public side. And so actually, they evaluate based on work. Couple of years, our students were second highest growth in the entire state. And then we look at data for we were out there. So we went to data, you know, present out with that. So that would be, we're back in the videos. So that's right. Same guy, same. I don't know. I know it's weird. I know that here's the. Support. Your top.
I'm not saying whether, yeah.
Did we bring that? Did we bring those bells?
Sorry. All right. So really quickly, we're gonna keep everybody moving along and we're going, closing breakout rooms while we talk. Elena, can you go to the next slide, please? We are now going to work through stipulations 4, 5, and 6, which don't fully flow together. But we figured we'd just give quick context and then let you all break out again. Stipulation 4 talks about student transportation on page 22. Talking about how the changes should be minimally disruptive for students attending schools, and during transition, they should still be able to have busing or however transportation to their school. Stipulation 5 talks about an assessment of the educational needs of City of Wilmington students and the resources required. In the in the proposal, we dig a little deeper from the consortium's data report that we do every year. But just to note, there's 11,279 City of Wilmington students. High percentage are Black, African American from low-income families. I'll let you all read. Stipulation 6. Directives for improving secondary education for City of Wilmington students, such as the provision of additional secondary schools. Again, on page 33. As we all know, there's no traditional public high school serving the City of Wilmington students, and that needs to be addressed as the proposal moves forward. Part of the WLC's efforts, as required in their MOU, is to address the high school option. And if this goes through the consortium, we'll work with stakeholders to figure out a plan. So now we are going to break back out and do your small groups
4, 5, and 6.
for 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah. How are you?
That's right. There has to be.
I think it's more.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's got to be. There's got to be some couple thousand. Christine is 33%. 8%. So a low income. I guess, we do some more jumps here.
Yeah, we need more time.
There's a lot of data, but yeah.
Seven to eight.
Oh, like coffee.
Maybe that was like-
Well, yes, and I don't judges.
We're about to, yeah. Okay. I don't just. So we're moving to 7, 8, stipulation 7 and 8. Good. Okay.
Go, we don't want from feedback.
Did they say yes?
You're supposed to write everything down.
Uh-huh.
Also, we're also gonna have a discussion with each of the leaders. We're gonna do all of them. I'm thinking of Kelly Dayton as going
Here's where it's- Once you go past that, that's a problem solving brain. That's why I always. Those two big issues. I don't know that we ever.
Yeah, I definitely think that, yeah.
Yeah. That would seem.
Yes.
They try to figure out. Yeah.
All my experience, sitting next to her, never. I'll be there.
The children shouldn't see how you want to. I wonder to make it slow when they're gonna figure it out.
We're gonna get everybody to hire out, but they're gonna make that in school. But yeah, part of the.
I think 3 and 4 are wrong.
It's three now, but the problem is 3. And 1 is 9%, so.
And then during the period.
What I read.
Thank you. There's a lot of.
You can just leave insurance 7 days. They just leave, go back. So they know where they are.
We don't have them. One of those things.
See, this is my favorite thing. This
In the interest of time, we're just gonna review stipulations 9 through 13, and we'll probably wrap up around 6:25. or 6:30? Is that okay?
9 to 13.
Yeah. Unless people want to stay an extra half hour.
Yeah. So.
Oh, no, I have to stay.
Right now. Yeah, we're gonna have all of it.
Yeah, sure.
That's what we could jump on. So, just a question.
Would be there.
Well, they can go visit you.
So it's rates it out.
So I did, I'm saying that.
So we're.
Right.
Good job.
I didn't know if that was.
Whole guys. You know, we're not gonna hire people to come and do it. Why?
No, right?
Yeah.
We're just. Yeah.
Everything that they could talk about.
I think we should edit these. Somebody. These are happy. And, but everybody said it's cheerful, works hard. But, you know. I was there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was great. Well, I got
Last week.
I think you're very
That's my instinct. Right.
Yeah, so I went to the county and I had to check. Signed it. I've heard that, you know, there's these. I don't know if you remember. They had a nice program. I remember of the meeting when I did it. I had to tell them to say, you know, years they were so upset about it. When
It started out.
I told him. Because I tell people, I can do this.
Did I?
So like, how do you feel with that? Yeah. Really. I've been watching this, they were talking about, I think they were talking about the subway crossing. Oh, what's this guy? You guys, you'll look alike. You look like Steve, spoke like him, in the same accent. Right. Well enough that he can stay. Bigfoot's not that close. So there are some. Yeah. It's like. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. She does a sign. Well.
Really all.
Are we done?
Short time.
Co-chairs, calling co-chairs.
Come back. And we'll get all the answers.
Calling, I mean, sorry.
Been a while. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's-
Yeah, for that.
Yeah.
It's not as here. Somebody looking at this.
Yeah.
What's that? Are you? It's coming. It's gonna feel like it at the end of the week. Yeah.
How are you? Good, how are you doing?
Now we're gonna
I
share.
do. I will.
Stipulation, so we'll do section for stipulation. And well. That's fair, we can do it.
Yeah.
Like everything is so.
Okay. All right.
Okay, what you say? Right.
Really. And then maybe. All right. I think everyone's waiting for you.
So we're going to share.
We're gonna review the goals of 1 through 3, and then we're all, our team's gonna do all of these acts. Board, the chair, 3 minutes. I'm gonna use-
There.
So
Good to see you.
everyone, thank you for participating.
Kenny, thank you.
Where we're gonna go, we're gonna go back to share out. So we're gonna go back to stipulations 1 through 3. And we're gonna take a few minutes, 5 or 6 minutes, and just receive some feedback. And the IPA staff is gonna help document and record the feedback. So we can just go around if you want to share. We, again, this is a part of our input. And that will help us in order to generate a proposal that we will submit that is inclusive and inclusive of your feedback from this workshop. So please feel free to share. Sharing is good. It's welcome, it's needed.
We'll start.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a disclaimer that, we don't know, we only have the information that we have before us. Some of us are some historical information. So the question, for stipulation, one, is that, there is a viewpoint, in this group that Shortledge and Warner, the modification involving Shortledge and Warner should not be, and that Shortledge and Warner should be placed with the original proposed strip plan. And there was a counter viewpoint that there is a value in keeping those schools in the district that they're in, because of the relationship development and the support services that have been provided for a significant number of years. So that was the biggest conversation that we had. It's only 3 of us, but we're not identifying who has what position. That was the biggest conversation for stipulation 1.
Thank you.
Here, I would say we're centering on what was our biggest conversation.
just the definition behind minimally disruptive and is going from order to minimally disruptive, and then why we form the big school. It's the conversation. Also talked about, even though high school is in a later one, we know that's kind of the elephant in the room. So where does high school fit with this? Because that'll have a major impact on potential feeders. So the attendance zones, feeders also came up, but where do high schools lie with that? I'd say we talked for 30 minutes on it, but that would be in a nutshell.
Thank you. Thanks.
We spent a lot of time discussing student attendance in the students being permitted to continue attending the school in which they're currently going to, and would that end at a particular grade configuration, or would they perhaps be allowed to continue to stay, in that sort of, if they're an elementary into the middle school feeder that currently exists, and how might that also apply to their high school options? And would it be a one-time selection? So, districts have done this before, and, my experience tells me they usually have a day of choice, so to speak. Are you going to stay in the free feeder pattern, or are you going to attend the school in which your new feeder pattern is sending students? And then what are the implications of all of that? We spent a good bit of time discussing that very issue.
We discussed, sir.
Sure, everyone's all here, right? I think, and we're saying one, we did 1 through 3, right?
Yes.
2 is contradictory. In the sense that you can't redraw the district boundaries in Wilmington and northern Newcastle County to better serve the educational interests of all students, including reducing the concentration of low-income students and improving educational services to support English learners and other students at risk. So if we're saying Newcastle County, and we're hyper-focused on Wilmington, but we have Neighborhood Schools Act that has already done the very thing that we're trying to undo. And how do you do that without it not being minimally disruptive? Just trying to wrap my mind around how do you do it? It's going to be disruptive. So in essence, we're looking at probably disrupting 40,000 families if we're redrawing feeder patterns and boundaries. And not to say that it doesn't need to be done, it does. But how do you look at it when we have, and I gave Rick this example, in Red Clay, we have 8 middle school programs. Last year, we had about 1,358 graders that were slated to go to 24 different district or charter high schools this year. And so when we talk about looking through the lens of, to Secretary Holliday point, staying within a current feeder pattern, like at what point is the cutoff point with the new established entity, regardless of where they go? But I think in essence, we're kind of actually concentrating it more based on Neighborhood Schools Act, based on choice. And I think we got to look at all of those implications in terms of how that all ultimately impacts the overall goal that we're looking to achieve for students and families in the city.
So, we had lots of discussion, but one of the things that we zeroed in on, for number 3, just the clarification that, what's being discussed here is almost a mandated choice period, versus tuition, which is really segregated for just special education students under the current language. So, just changing the language to reference chapter 4 of code, which is for school choice. And that could be the mechanism by which there's a financial, the dollars moving to accommodate the students that are staying in place under number 3.
Which to a degree of said district who would be inheriting the lion's share of that, what does that choice implication look like in terms of mechanisms being able to absorb 4,300 students, right? Albeit all of them don't currently attend, but they're going in so many different ways. Being able to try from a business office standpoint, being able to handle those mechanics would be a burden on the district.
So I'm going to extrapolate from what our group just had talked about, just based on what was just said. So you can feel free to cut me off.
I wouldn't think of it.
So the fact that I'm pretty sure I didn't understand anything that Emily just said, sort of reflects that we actually did not spend very much time talking about stipulations 1 through 3, because our larger concern was that there's not really much in here as to how we're going to pay, what it's gonna cost, who's gonna pay for it, regardless of what the feeder pattern ends up being. And I think, my inclination at least was that Representative Chakotcha and Councilman Street have spent all the time looking at this, spent the time talking to stakeholders, and so I'm sort of inclined to defer to their judgment about what the right feeder pattern is, but that's just sort of part one. There is, the high school issue, there's all the issues about what resources are needed, who's gonna provide them, and I don't think that we can, and I realize I'm skipping ahead to other stipulations, but I just don't know that we can deliver something to school board, to the General Assembly that doesn't have those blanks filled in to some degree, maybe not, to the degree of precision that is gonna, be there in the end, but we, so I think that we have to have, some answers to those other questions. I'd at least want to see that before I would want to, vote yea or nay on something. So I'm sorry for going outside those 3 stipulations.
Well, I didn't understand the instructions. So I did. So, after everybody does them, we have commentary on stipulations 2 and 3. I only did 1.
Yes, I mean, please share, and that's the intent, to get the feedback on 1 through 3 right now, so yes.
There are other people.
I think, I know, like, the group I was a part of, we never went through 1, 2, and 3, it was more of a general conversation about all of them, so some groups didn't go 1, 2, and 3, but if you did,
Number 2.
we definitely would like to hear 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you.
Oh,
I set the stage.
I think we-
My hand right.
we agreed about number 2.
Yeah.
There's really, it's almost an oxymoron about how to try and make that happen. Because you're just moving a kid in Browntown from being in Christina to being in Red Clay. We're still surrounded with the same zip code and all the factors that impact that child as well. How do you do that? And that's the main one.
And would it really reduce the concentration?
Is right.
Cool.
So
So I-
the premise of the stipulation is reduce certain things to mitigate the concentration of poverty. And so we're agreeing that that's a faulty premise, just dealing with the reality.
Right,
And you named a couple of factors, but just the growth of students that are low income across the state, and including northern Newcastle County, the growth in poverty across all districts has increased. So that stipulation needs, the way it's worded, and just the thought, the concept of it needs a lot more thinking.
yes.
Yeah, that's directly from the code.
And then the third one, and we have one on the third.
The code from what? The legislation, right?
I'm ready for. Good, it's great.
But the way it's set up is that these stipulations. I'm sorry, you're attempting to speak to each one.
No, you're right. I'm just saying that's where the language comes from, the initial legislation that established.
Right, so the limitations of it need to be brought up.
Yeah, yeah.
Kevin?
Oh, I was the one who was against having Warner and Shortly stay within, Red Clay. I think if you're looking at a geographical world, that the north side is defined by that DMZ line of 30th Street. Market to Broome, 30th and Brandywine is now still be Red Clay. If I live above 30th Street, I'm in Brandywine. If I'm east of Market, I'm in Brandywine. Whereas on the other side of the river now, we have the whole east and west side of the city kind of continuous with the same school districts. So kids kind of interact with each other a little different than they do. But that was my point, but I'm willing to, whatever the group decides to move on with it, that's fine. There's been a lot of investment in those schools that you've done, Darrell, and in those schools. But also look at, we got a brand new band called school, thanks to legislators, Representative Williams and others things that we're doing here and stuff. Not to fall in the sword over just a point I was making myself.
Kevin, I think to that point, looking at it through just the lens of schools and feeder patterns, I think is also a mistake, right? Because I think inherently what we have is housing through various communities. That's why our young people are engaged because of that very reason, right? Like we've drawn these arbitrary boundaries or lines that inherently, through youth sports, and I think that was part of my feedback too. We got to look at this through the lens of the broader ecosystem.
Correct.
Right? What does this mean for a community? Right? And having schools that would interact with one each other. So we're not defining it as north side versus east side versus South Bridge versus West Center City versus Hilltop. So that there is a level of engagement and interaction at a younger age. And I think that's one of the benefits of looking at breaking down some of these barriers. Because I think it's perpetuated much of what we're getting out of the city, where our young people don't engage with each other until they've already had these defined barriers in their minds. We had the fortune of bringing about 500 young men of color in the city, across the city at the Wilmington Pound on the 29th of February. And it was a beautiful sight. And I'll sit here and tell you, a lot of people were hesitant to have their students engage in that out of fear that something was going to happen. And shame on us that we've created a system that we don't want to bring young people together out of fear. That's why we see a lot of things play out in the community the way they do, because their point of interaction is in their youth, teenage years, where it's, how do we engage with parks and rec? To I think break down some of those barriers that are part of this broader educational ecosystem that we're talking about. To minimize, I think, some of the outcomes that we're seeing, not just educationally, but socially, across the city. So definitely a point noted, but we want to keep short the June water regardless of whatever anyone's idea or plans are, because we are heavily invested in what's.
And my perspective was around some of the support of those students in that community through health workers, of course, I've got that health lens because we work together
Yes, we do.
to get school-based health centers in those island schools. It's really critical, and they're working with community health workers, with families and the community. There's a lot invested there already. That was my lens. On the third one, though, kind of blended with the fourth one, because you said, keep going to the schools they attended, that's great. And we gotta make sure we can get them to the right spot, right?
Yes, and we can't disentangle stipulation 3 from high school. You have to know where you're going.
And Ray talked about a student might be in kindergarten, first grade, they may end up staying there for the next 7 years, 8 years. They're able to keep staying at that school. So this is a longer term transition, right? Am I capturing your point, Rick?
Yes, but I have to think about it. I mean, I'm in agreement that people should be able to stay in the schools that they're familiar with the proper supports. But if a kindergartner goes through, is in a K-8 school, they can still be in that school for a very extended period of time And we can't wait until somebody is in the fifth, sixth grade to figure out like where to go to high school. And what their options are. So this is, it doesn't really list out the potential scenarios around time frame. I guess that's work to be done. And again, the point about ecosystem in high school, and the planning for high school. It's all wrapped up together. Mhm. That is it. Oh, the transportation, did you get transportation yet? Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep, we're headed to transportation. That's the next one.
You know, when I started.
Yep.
Interesting.
Ross to go.
You can.
Ray, you wanna talk about this or?
Or 5 and 6.
I think you should, because transportation to me is like so complicated. I mean, we have complex transportation system right now. So some of the notes say that the school districts and the issues around liability. It's not just routes, it's, and to consider alternative modes of transportation. There are a lot of transportation policies right now that don't make sense. I'm sorry, Lord, but they don't. Like, for instance, we can't get school buses to drop off at community-based programs because they didn't pick them up there. So they won't drop them off there. So when we say, you know, you want to have this holistic set of support services, or you have kids in the same family that can't ride the same bus.
Right, like, and I know this is charter, but get a charter, get a cab, charter kid can get taken home. But cab kid can't ride that bus because there's a liability, this is different in the contract. So those issues, will be the work in the weeds that will prevent transportation from working. Unless there's agreements around that, and that gets complicated.
I believe town and charter do share transportation.
Yeah, they do. So
They
again.
do.
I'm a little dated, sorry.
I would just say CAB and charter are obviously, we serve as the only charter authorized as a district, so they do share the same routes as it relates to CAB and charter. Now, maybe if we're talking again about the city as a whole, that might be a different situation because each charter, each district is their own LEA. I would say from a transportation standpoint of having what's defined as elementary versus middle, secondary, and the radius. Because as much as we see it as a city, as a city, but the radius itself, in terms of who will qualify for transportation, I think would be the bigger challenge in terms of limiting factors in terms of, if I'm a secondary student, I have a 2-mile radius, which means I'm a walker. So now I'm traversing, depending on where my school is, I don't get access to transportation. And then you're looking at, so to Ray's point, it's a complicated situation.
Complicated, and I apologize, this is from back.
Yep.
I experienced this,
Yep.
but it was out in Newark, getting charter can go there, maybe it's the radius.
We got it right.
Right?
We figured it out.
So
And that's progress, so that's great. The point is, we gotta make sure we get transportation right, it's be really complicated. Across different, districts. 5 or 6.
I think 5 goes back to
Yes.
gaps in services. 5 is going to be the toughest one to deal with. Listen, all the data there to me is anthropology. We keep studying the same anthropology and come up with the same answer. You know, students are not learning in the city of Wilmington, they need additional resources. So I'm fine, the data's there, but that's not what it's all about. How do we do an assessment of the educational needs of city students? And the question is, once you identify what they need, where are the resources to make sure that they can move forward with what they need? That's the hard. Goes back to number 2, and how do you do that when everybody's kind of together still on the same?
That's where early learning comes.
Correct. But they are things we have to address. And I don't think going stick with secondary, high school. Listen, you could have a high school at Byron tomorrow. There's enough capacity at Byron School. There's capacity in some schools in the city. So there's a will, there's a ways that none told me when I was in Catholic school. So there's some capacity where we could have a high school in the city. There's no doubt about it. We don't need to build a new one. That's our comments on that. Anything else?
And we're going toward, 7, and we realize that a lot of comments haven't been shared yet, so we do want to avail the opportunity. We're not going anywhere, so we're going to stay, and if you can stay, we invite you to stay. We do want to hear from, and I know we're in this process, but we can't do it alone. You are the educators, you are the professionals, you are the invested stakeholders. We can't do this plan without you, and we need a sense of, there was, a grave sense of optimism and hope in wanting to get to that point. I mean, many of us around this table were a part of WIC, and we in seeing our brother Tony Allen arguing this point about how do we galvanize this same sense of support to do something. Secretary Geisenberg was mentioning the economic impact and how we begin to change this narrative about education into tying it into the workforce and painting this different picture of Wilmington and tying that to the students and to the schools and to the educational supports that are provided. It's a sense of we're here and we're in the middle of trying to come up with a plan, one that can go forward. I truly feel that can give our city a voice, that can help make our city whole again. And no matter how or what way in which we start to look at it or to begin to plan and develop proposals, we're not going to have everything included. And much of what we've taken here was directly from WIC in terms of the direction that we were then. And again, that was 5, 7 so years ago. And so much has changed in these 7 years. But for that base of realizing that it's a skeleton where we are, and that there is, of course, we remember that the WIC book was this thick, so there are many other elements and meat to this bone. This was just the skeleton that we wanted to present in terms of providing some of the direction in our thoughts about ways in which to begin to develop a plan. But we do believe that there is a window of opportunity, and we believe that there is a sense that we can do this, that we can get this done. But we think that there's a need, and there is a need to want to do something for Wilmington students, and not just saying Wilmington, meaning, oh, we're going to help these kids, but our students are your students. And when we think about it in the way in which the services and the supports that our schools need, and they're not receiving. And no matter how much we're trying right now in this broken system, we're not achieving our goals. So when we say we need to do something different, I think every one of us around this table believes that. But it's about how do we get to that point of saying this is something we can do. And I think that's the intent, the spirit of these exercises, is to pull this energy and this effort in these comments and these suggestions so that we can begin to develop this plan, because it's not going to happen by just saying, oh, we don't have this, we don't have that. Oh, I like this, I don't like that. We can't have it all. We can't have it all. And without everyone participating, everyone helping, and to just move this thought forward. And it means the world to this city that I love. We can do better. We can do better for our children. I believe everyone around these tables believe that. And if we do, then we can find a way to improve the educational outcomes for our children. We can improve the model through which our education services are being provided to our children. That's all we're asking. That's all we're asking. Because if you believe that this full district model is working, you're wrong. It's not working. And this proposal, it's by no stretch of the imagination the answer. but is it a start to this conversation? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to start this conversation to do something different, to say, hold up, this has not worked. This has not worked. Not that we think this is going to work by itself, it won't. That's why we're trying to get the input to say, we can do this, but we need the input. That's, so again, that was the intent of the exercises. We need your input. We value your input. We want to make this work for all of our students, for our city, for all of your districts who help serve our city. So thank you. If you do want to stay and continue to give comment, we welcome it. And if you don't, you can please send in comment.
The members Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay. Just you want to announce that? Just for the
So-
interest of time, we want to make sure to make space for a public comment period. But it, like you said, I think you're here, we will be here to continue to take some
I-
consortium feedback. Do
Before we have the public comment, oh, sorry,
you want to finish 4 to 6?
no,
Oh.
look like somebody else had their hand up.
I didn't know if you wanted to keep going with 4 through 6, since if you did, I was gonna tell you what we discussed on my fourth one.
I mean, I
But
think
if
we
not-
do, but I think we were trying to be mindful of the public's expectation to have an opportunity to give input.
So before we have, just procedurally, I just would like to make sure that we're sort of moving forward in a thoughtful way
Mhm.
after today. So just going back to what we were talking about earlier, it is, I think, very difficult for us to react to some of these things without having something, at least in the form of a proposal in front of us. So for 1 through 3, there was a suggestion, this is what it ought to look like, and we could talk about, was it good, bad, or what have you. But for a lot of these other categories, it's sort of to be determined later, to be named later. And I don't think that we can deliver, this is my opinion, I don't think we can deliver a proposal to the state
Hey!
school that says.
Are you out of your mind? What are you doing? Oh,
Oh, I was gonna assume he's not referring to me.
I think
Who
you
knows?
started.
Okay. So I think that we need time.
Everybody gets.
And if it requires a meeting more often, I'm happy to meet more often, or, whatever the format is, but I think that, we need to have an opportunity to have something in front of us that talks about what's this gonna cost, who's gonna pay for it. I mean, I have some ideas about, those things, but I think there needs to be time for us to see those things and talk about them before we actually have to send a recommendation down. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, I think that there are, for some of us, there are things that we would also like to see part of this that don't neatly fall into the categories that are, there's some musts in the statute, and then there's also some mays. And I think several of us have thoughts about, there are things that we really ought to be part of this, that we would also like a chance to talk about. And, and again, just speaking for myself, I think that there are things that we should be doing in some of these schools that are going to make them magnets. I would love to see a waiting list for kids going to Bancroft, Warner, Stubbs. I would like for us to be doing some things in those schools that are going to make them, programmatically attractive to people throughout county. And so I would like to see those be part of, whatever ultimately gets discussed by the school board and by the General Assembly. So all of which is to say, I just think that we have a lot to do before we vote on something. And I think that it would be good to think about, like, how are we going to get that done? And, what's a realistic process and time frame for getting that done?
No, I appreciate the comment. And just so everyone knows, there are a couple other stakeholders who are working with us in the IPA team to help us in some of those areas that you don't see, financial, in terms of educator recruitment and retention. Some of those other groups are working. Link.
I'm gonna echo the same sentiment. When I looked at that timeline, and you said by the end of March, having something ready to take forward to the State Board of Education. I know Brandywine still has to meet to provide its feedback to the group. But the idea of meeting with boards and having them hear the presentation from you for the first time, and then an amount of time allowing them for them to give incredible feedback, thoughtful feedback,
Same thing with the town halls. How is that feedback mechanism built into that timeline? Because it looks very tight to me that feedback, like when you get feedback, you alter, revise, plan, then you gotta bring it back to the group that hasn't seen it, right? This group, and get feedback on that. I mean, there's a whole process to it, and we're talking 19 days.
Now, noted, we realize that it is a tough challenge. And that we believe it's one that we felt we wanted to take, that we have to take, even though it is abbreviated in terms of duration. It's a lot of work that needs to be done. Again, we felt that much of what's not seen is, we feel, is being worked on, and some of it is available again through the WEAC plan, in order to give us some more of what's not here, that it is here. We're trying to change it in a way in which it meets the current educational landscape within the city, but we do recognize the challenge. But again, it was one that we felt that we believe that there was a window of opportunity, and we wanted to take it. Yeah, if there's other feedback, we welcome it, but if not, we would go to.
I think we should, you should probably do public comment first.
Yeah.
We can
If
take.
there is.
Public comment.
I would like to give public.
Yes.
Okay.
So, hi, everyone. I'm Representative Williams. Thank you for the work that this body has done, throughout the years. I have great concerns about this, since the governance committee has not met since 2020, right?
That was a different.
Yeah, different
That was
committee.
the last time that this group met. And so have they met since then?
No, that group no longer exists, that particular sub. there
But
was a group.
what is the group called that came up with this? Because there's two members. There's no community members. There's no members of that group. So
Yeah,
my concern is that we're doing a plan and we don't know the financial impact. We don't know, if you look at the WEAC plan, it says that Red Clay is not gonna be whole after this, that we're gonna owe money after this. Like, who's gonna pay for it? Like, where is the input from my constituents? Where's the input from me? Like, how is this plan gonna work? Like, I mean, I have so many questions, and to have this come before the state board. I mean, is Red Clay gonna have to come up with a plan and take away from bringing their reading scores up? Who's gonna figure out the dollar amounts, and if we need additional school board members and attendance zones, like, it is concerning. And I mean, I want the plan to be successful. I want to be a part of it, but I haven't been a part of it. I found out through the grapevine. And so the agenda tonight doesn't talk about that we're gonna talk about this plan, it just says governance. My constituents don't know what that means, that you're getting their theater patterns. So I could go on, but I am here to support you. I want it to work. I just think the timeline that you are presenting is pretty impossible to make without having community input, feedback, and a dollar amount of what the state needs to come up with and what we need to really make sure the resources are there for the kids. So I don't want to say that I don't want to do it. I want to help, but I want to be a part of it. I don't want to be someone in the background listening. And I know there's other people who feel that way. I mean, the Red Clay School Board doesn't have hardly any knowledge about this plan, except what they just got through talking to various people. But so I do appreciate the work that you've done. I know that you're dedicated, and I want it to be successful. And the only way we can do that is make sure there's money there and that the resources are there. So, thank you.
Thank you. You're not online? And that's not. Put a comment in the chat. I think a few minutes ago. So let's give it a moment. If anyone else in the room who's a non-consortium member or is online who wants to offer any thoughts, this is the time to do so before Melody takes it back to the consortium. Representative. Okay.
Only if the screen's it.
Yeah. Oh, you can unmute yourself and speak, Mr. Matthews.
Hi, everyone. This is Mike Matthews. First, let me apologize. Right as I logged on, I didn't unmute, and my 8-month-old puppy Tucker was destroying today's news journal that I hadn't read yet. So yes, he was out of his mind. My apologies. I just want to echo what Representative Williams has said. I'm a Red Clay resident. I'm also a Red Clay teacher. I've been involved in a lot of these conversations over the last decade since Jack Markell stood on the steps of what was my school at Warner Elementary and announced priority schools. We're coming on 10 years since that announcement. Yes, a lot really, really, really needs to be done. And I am always about removing barriers. I'm not necessarily against some of the ideas the consortium is sharing. My concern is that it's not getting an appropriate amount of community input, and the funding needed to make this work is just not there. I don't know that we're there. I don't know that this is an idea for now. I know we need to move. We need to move on something. We've been waiting too long. I do have concerns about the responsibilities of the Red Clay School District if this were to go through and there was not adequate state funding to support it. We just passed a referendum. We did pretty well for ourselves. But are we going to have to pass another capital referendum? Should we get these buildings? And what's the plan? I think we just need to see the plan. So thank you for tolerating me harassing my puppy, and everyone have a great night.
Thank you.
No, good. Thank you for humoring that. Important to hit that procedurally. Sorry, Representative.
No, appreciated the public comment as well as the comments, and I'm greatly appreciative of the concerns that are being presented. Believe me, we understand them, and we acknowledge the concerns, and a lot of them we have been discussing. I feel that there is a mechanism, I guess internally that we've been working on to look at it and vet some of those issues, but they're here, they're the reality of the situation in terms of trying to change something. I think that, again, the input is needed, and the way in which we go about just garnering input as we continue. But again, we'll go around and continue if there are additional comments or feedback. Secretary.
So just, again, we're going through the stipulations, so that Darrell doesn't have to be the only person from our group we talked to. We did talk about, on the school transportation, obviously, if you're going to say that everybody can stay with whatever school they are, there's going to be transportation ramifications. Whatever the funding is, most of that funding comes from the state anyway, so you would have to figure out what that is. I don't know that that's something that needs to hold this up. I just think it's something they have to, account for down the road once you knew what people actually decided to do. Right? You really don't know until people make the decision, costs or not. On number 5, we did talk about both Brandywine and Red Clay, this assessment that I guess would need to be done as it relates to the number of students that Brandywine and then the number of students that go to Red Clay, which could be a very wide range. 4,500 bodies, that's 1,700 who are actually in, I guess, is that right, public school, right? And, to what extent DOE could be a resource in helping. I wanted to wait until you got back in the room, Mark, but to what extent DOE could be helpful in helping do that assessment as opposed to having all the burden fall on the school district to try to figure out all of that. They felt, Burrell felt it made some sense to me that having some support from DOE helpful on that. And then on the we talked a little bit about the high school thing. I'm in Kevin's camp, which is where there's a will, there's a way. As I like to say, my kids went to Brandywine and they went to Mount Pleasant, and if you ask them, they'd say, yeah, I went to a city high school. Because most of the kids there, certainly at Mount Pleasant, are city. So, there are solutions to that. I think it just takes, planning part of each school district.
Any additional comments, feedback? I was just reminded of one point when, as we were discussing this timeline and the short window that we have, that we had at our initial meeting in January, where we wanted to, in December, where we wanted to present this, we were asked to hold off. So basically, for the past 3 months, out of respect for our districts and the work that they had to do with their referendum, we weren't discussing it. So we were asked not to discuss it, not to share it, not to move forward. And we knew that put us in a time frame, some realistically, somewhat new, or there was a sense that once we finished that and we got the referendum, there wouldn't be enough time. But we still felt that we were going to push forward. So we do know we did this to ourselves intentionally or unintentionally, but again, as the senator just mumbled in my ear, it was to support our districts, and it was done, I guess, with that olive branch of saying we were doing this for the district so that the districts could also help us, because we need their help. But we didn't intentionally put ourselves in this situation where it's impossible, but that's where we are today. And I think that is a worthwhile point to note, because we were trying to get this in December and trying to move forward at that time, and we were asked to hold it until after the referendum. So we thank our districts, congratulate them on their hard work, and we know this as well is a very difficult and it's a hard task. And just like the work and the commitments that our district showed inside of our communities to pass the referendum, it's going to be just as likewise akin to the work that we need to do to pass a momentous plan such as this proposal to really bring our district together in this type of change. So just thank everyone for their comments. If you do have additional comments, we welcome you to share them, or please email them to us. Is the email?
I'll put it in the chat.
The email will be in the chat, or for those who would like to submit their feedback. And we will again be following up with our district partners. But this is a quest that we do want to push forward with. So even if I believe in my heart of hearts, my senator once said to me that if it's not, if this isn't the time that we get it passed, at least we've taken that swing. I didn't understand it when she said it, and I almost cried. So I'm like, we can't. But now I guess I understand it, that this is a quest, one in which I believe we will be successful. We cannot just sit here and say we will not continue this fight. We're going to continue to develop this proposal. And again, we need your feedback in order to have something to present. If hopefully we can make the short window that we have, but if not, we will continue our work and effort that we will develop this plan and have one that is sufficient, that includes your input, and that will be well vetted by your public bodies as well as your boards. To host a meeting. It's our intent to host a follow-up meeting on March 21st. So if you do have additional input that you would like to see included, we will definitely welcome you to that meeting. Again, that's going to be March 21st, as well as what has been noted, our meetings within our districts and also public hearings within each of our 4 city districts.
Can I make one comment?
Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to go back to the whole referendum thing. Are you saying this report was done in December?
We were presenting, we were ready to present where we are today in December.
The only thing I'm gonna say about that is the districts were trying to get through a referendum,
Yeah.
and to try to prepare for your report was impossible. So I just want to go on record. It's a little, I just think it's unfair to.
No,
say that.
I would completely respect your point, Representative, but, and I'm saying, and I'm sure my district partners will tell you, they asked us to hold it, and that's what we
Well, I
did,
think
so.
we're working with the referendums to try to get.
And
them
that-
passed,
as
And the
they-
report wasn't done yet. So the report was still being worked on. So that's all I want to say.
Their referendums weren't done yet. They were working on the referendums. We were working. So we all were working and we respected them. And hopefully, again, they can respect us and join us in this fight. And we're not fighting our districts. We're not fighting our charters. We're fighting for our children, our children. So thank you, everyone. If there is nothing else, I will call the meeting to an end. Thank you.
I have a lot of feedback.